Hello everyone. Today is lesson 9.5. We're comparing and ordering fractions. So with this lesson, we actually may have more than two fractions like we're used to. All right, and it's the 16th. All right, so here we go. Just a reminder about your mid-chapter checkpoint quiz, which is inside the book. That was yesterday's work, so make sure you send me a picture of that so I can give you a grade. All right, here we go. So just some reminders, we need to circle the fractions that we're using and underlining the sentence that tells us what we need to do. Sierra, Tad, and Dale ride their bikes to school. Sierra rides 3/4 of a mile, Tad rides 3/8 of a mile, and Dale rides 3/6 of a mile. Compare and order the distances from least to greatest. That's what we're doing. So here we have a whole, okay? Now let's look at this fraction strip right here. And we know that this is going to be Sierra's because there's 4 pieces and her fraction is out of 4. So let's shade in 3/4 for Sierra. Now I'm going to also label this Sierra so I know. Now we have a fraction strip cut into 8ths, and that must be Tad. So 3/8 for Tad. And then this fraction strip is cut into 6 pieces, so that is going to be Dale's, and he rides 3/6, so 3 out of 6, which is also a half. Now we're ordering from least to greatest. So step 1, shade 1 unit fraction for each fraction strip. Looking at this, I can see that 1/4 is the longest fraction strip, right? It goes the farthest, closest to a whole. Now the shortest looks like 1/8. Okay. Are the shaded fourths still the longest? Yes, they are. Once we shaded 3 of them, it's still the longest, so yes, that fraction strip. And are the shaded 8ths still the shortest? Yes, they are. All right, continue shading the fraction strips so that the 3 unit fractions are shaded for each strip, which we actually did ahead of time. Are the shaded fourths still the longest? Yes. And are the shaded 8ths still the shortest? Yes as well. 3/4 of a mile is the longest distance, right? Looking at those, that's what that means, right? It's the longest out of all of these. And 3/8 of the mile is the shortest distance. 3/6 of a mile is between the other 2 distances, right? Longest, in the middle, shortest. So the distances in order from least to greatest would be 3/8, that's the smallest. In the middle, we said was 1/6, or well, 3/6. Oops. And the longest one is 3/4 of a mile. Okay. All right. So we're going to be ordering these 3 fractions, 2/6, 2/3, and 2/4 from greatest to least, so biggest to smallest. Okay, and then we're going to label the fraction shortest, in between, and longest, just like we did on that other page. So here's our fractions. Now unit fractions, remember all the way back to, I believe it was lesson 8.1, is just one piece of that fraction. So that would be 1/6, 1/3, and 1/4. Now this is a really easy way to look and compare. So looking at the unit fractions, the shortest one would be have more in the denominator, a greater denominator, right? Because there's more pieces split up, meaning each piece is smaller. So this one is going to be the shortest. After 6, next would be 4, so between. And then the longest would be 1/3. Now, if we drew out our fraction strips, everyone, and we shaded in okay, let's see if I can do this. No, I already messed up. Okay, so let me just start with this. Okay, so here's going to be 1/6. Let's break this into 6 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now let me do 1/4. 1, 2, 4. And then let me do 1/3. All right, so here's 1/3. Here's 1/4, and here's 1/6. Now, if I did a better job drawing my fraction strips, we would see that 1/3 is the longest, 1/4 is in between, and 1/6 is the shortest. When the numerators are the same, think about the size of the pieces, right? To compare and order fractions, right? How big are these sizes of pieces? When you have a larger denominator and your numerators are the same, then you know that your pieces are going to be smaller. More is less. So the order from greatest to least is, greatest would be 1/3. In between is 1/4. And then the shortest is 1/6. But let me convert it back to the original fraction. So 1/3 was 2/3. 1/4 was 2/4, and 1/6 was 2/6. Okay? All right. Shade the fraction strips to order 5/8, 8/8, and 3/8. So let's shade 5/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's shade 8/8. And 3/8. When the denominators are the same, the size of the pieces is also the same. So think about the number of pieces to compare and order fractions. Right? How many pieces do we have shaded in? So looking at this, the shortest one is here, right? That's less shaded in than the others, and that fraction is 3/8. Now the longest, the one that goes all the way to the end, is 8/8, which is also 1/2. And blank is between the two other fractions. That would be this one right here, 5/8. So the order from least to greatest would be 3/8. Then we have 5/8, oops, and then we have 8/8. Okay. Here we go. Share and show. Shade the fraction strips to order 4/6, 4/4, and 4/8 from least to greatest. So first, let's look at 4/6. That's got to be this one because I can see the denominators are all 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4/4 would be looking at this fraction strip, and 4 out of all 4. It's also a whole. The whole thing is shaded. And then 4/8 is this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can see how 4/8 is also 1/2, looking at that strip right there. So looking at this, 4/8 is clearly the shortest, right? Comes right here. This one's all the way over here, and 4/6 beats 4/8 by a little bit. So 4/8 is the shortest, and I would say 4/4 is the longest. It goes all the way to the end. And in between would be 4/6. So let's order these from least to greatest. The smallest one is 4/8. Then we have 4/6. And then we have 4/4. All right, notice we've got the same numerator for all of these and different denominators. And that's telling us, okay, how many pieces are there total? All right, now for numbers 2 through 7, we are just ordering them. All right, looking at this one, we're going to have definitely, all same denominators. It's a good thing to point out. 0 out of 2 is definitely least. Then we're gonna have a half, and then we're gonna have 2 halves, right? Now it's really nice when you have the same denominator here because you just look at the numerator and you go from least to greatest. 0, 1, 2. All right, we have same numerator. I'm just doing this for my notes. Same numerator, different denominators. So what I want us to look at is if the numerator is denominator is bigger, larger, it's actually going to be a smaller fraction because it's broken up into more pieces. So we're gonna go 1/6, then we have a third, and then we have a half from least to greatest, right? These denominators are going from the biggest one to the smallest. More pieces, meaning each piece is smaller. All right, doing the same thing here. I have the same denominator, but different numerators. So this one is going to be 6/6, right? That's a whole. 5/6, and then 2/6. So when that denominator is the same, you just check out that numerator. We have the same numerator here. So again, the denominator that's actually the biggest is the smallest fraction, 1/8. No, wait. Yeah. Oh, sorry, greatest to least. So 1/2, 1/4, and then 1/8 because it's greatest to least, not least to greatest. That's tricky. All right, number 6, write the fractions from least to greatest, okay? We have the same numerator. So we're gonna check out the denominator, and the one that is actually bigger is a smaller fraction. More pieces, each piece is smaller then. Okay, 6/8, 6/3, and then 6 halves. And we have the same denominator here. So we are going to look at our numerators for number 7. That's 1 whole, right? 2 out of 2 shaded. Then we have 4 halves, and then we have 8 halves. Because it's least to greatest, we're just going to order it looking at the numerator. Okay. Number 8. Pam is making biscuits. She needs, and I'm going to label off to the side, she needs 2/6 of a cup of oil. She needs 2/3 of a cup of water, and she needs 2/4 of a cup of milk. Okay, that's just a way for me to look at it and stay organized. Write the ingredients from the greatest to least. Okay, so we have the same numerator here. They're all 2. So we're going to check out the denominator. Remember, if we're going from least to greatest, the denominator that is actually more, right? If it's split into smaller pieces. So from greatest to least, we're going to do 2/3, 2/4, and then 2/6. Okay? Same numerator, so check out the denominator. The one that is the largest denominator is actually the smallest fraction. And we're going from greatest to least. That's why it's at the end. So this is greatest to least. So many rules when dealing with ordering fractions, boys and girls. There's a lot of rules, and so it can be a little bit tricky. Maybe it would be good for me to write up maybe a Word document on Google Classroom with just the rules written out. Like what to do if the numerator is the same, what to do if the denominator is the same, what to do if they're different. Remember that missing piece strategy from yesterday. So let me know if that would help you and I can make one. All right, number 9. In 15 minutes, Greg's sailboat went 3/6 of a mile. So again, I'm going to just show my work even if it's over here for number 9. So Greg's sailboat went 3/6 of a mile. Gina's sailboat went 6/6 of a mile, which is also a hole. And Stuart's sailboat went 4/6 of a mile. Whose sailboat went the longest distance? So basically, what is the greatest fraction, right? We have the same denominator for all of these, right? 6, 6, and 6. So looking at these 3 people, Gina went the longest. She actually went the whole way, right? 6/6 of a mile. So I'm going to write Gina went the longest. And then I'm going to do, in parentheses, 6/6 of a mile. Whose sailboat went the shortest? Well, looking at this, because my denominators are all the same, I just check out my numerator, and 3 is the smallest one. So Greg went the shortest distance. Oops. And I'm going to do 3/6 of a mile in parentheses. Okay, look back at problem 9. Write a similar problem by changing the fraction of a mile each sailboat traveled. So the answers are different from problem 9. Then solve the problem. So for number 10, you're just making up your own word problem and changing the fractions. So we could say a possible problem, Greg's sailboat went 4/4 of a mile, right? We could change our fractions and say that instead, right? Greg's, and I'm going to abbreviate, sailboat went 4/4 of a mile. How about Stuart's sailboat? Went 4/8, we'll say, of a mile. And Gina's sailboat went 4/6 of a mile, we'll say. Okay, so we're just making up our own word problem here. Who went the farthest? Okay, well, I have the fractions. Greg now is 4/4. Stuart is 4/8. And Gina is 4/6 of a mile. Same numerators, so look at the denominators. And looking at that, whose is the greatest because we want the farthest. Well, it looks like Greg here went 4/4, so Stuart, let's see. If the denominator is broken up into more pieces, then it would be Stuart's. Okay, now your word problems may be very different than mine because you may choose different fractions. Okay, and that's okay. Actually, this would be Greg's. I'm sorry, everyone. Greg's. Okay, number 11. Tom has 3 pieces of wood. The length of the longest piece is 3/4. And again, I'm writing out my facts to the side. The length of the shortest piece is 3/8. What might be the length of the third piece of wood, right? We've got the longest and we've got the shortest, but what about a middle one? What could go in between that? Again, your answers might be different from mine, but in between that, you could have the fraction 3/6 of a foot, right? And there's a few different options for that one that you might have. All right, Jesse ran 2/4 of a mile on Monday, 2/3 of a mile on Tuesday. So this is 2/4 Monday, 2/3 on Tuesday, and 2/8 on Wednesday. I'm just labeling it. Order the fractions from least to greatest. So we have the same numerator, so we're going to check out the denominators. Least would have a greater denominator because it's more pieces, meaning they're smaller. So we've got 2/8. Then it would be 2/4, and then it would be 2/3. Okay, again, the bigger the number on the bottom for denominator, the smaller the fraction is because the smaller those pieces have to be. Okay, so that is lesson 9.5 for today. Make sure to take a break and then do the homework page. After that, I gave you a lighter load today for work. You do have a Google Classroom Mystery Science activity, but other than that, you had your reading, the lesson from today, and I'm waiting on a good amount of people's Chapter 9 quiz, and about one more Chapter 8 test. So make sure you're getting in that work. Monday is the beginning of spring break, and if you're missing some things, that's a really good time to double check you have everything in. All right, everyone, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you soon.